Hello, everyone. This is Andrew from the Private Investigator Advice Podcast. This is episode 82, and the title of this podcast is Are All Cases Fraudulent That Are Worked by an Insurance Investigator? In other words, just because an insurance company assigns a case to whoever to investigate an insurance claim, does that automatically mean that there's something fraudulent going on? I think some people would say no, that's not what it means. And I think some people would say, yeah, that's exactly what it means. There's something going on here. There's something fraudulent happening. But the reality is the majority of the insurance work that I do isn't related to fraud at all. But before we get into that, just want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Private Investigator Advice. Investigators depend heavily on templates in our industry. It's just a fact. And that's why I'm really excited about having this investigator bundle on the Private Investigator Advice website. This investigator bundle contains a template, an intake template, so you can get all the important information you need from your client. And regarding the file that you're going to be working, there's also a private investigator retainer agreement that helps set the expectations for both you and your clients. I think you'd be surprised about some of the stuff that's in there that you might not have thought of that would be important when you're working files. And probably my favorite part of the bundle is that the surveillance template. The surveillance template breaks down different sections and kind of sets it up for you every time you want to go back to it, every time you're running a new report. To make things easier on you. And also what I did is added an example report for you. So if you're new to the industry or you're just starting a business and you want to make sure you kind of know the lingo or the verbiage, that report's in there for you to check out. And just to do one better, I added a video to that bundle for the surveillance template to kind of walk you through the different sections, to kind of explain to you why they're there, and also to make sure you know how to add pictures into it and things like that to spruce up your surveillance reports. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add links to all those products in the details below in the video and in the podcast of your podcast app, so you can click to there to get to it if you'd like to. Again, I thank you in advance if you decide to pick one of these up, and let's get on with the rest of the podcast. Okay, so I understand that we're all human, right? But I believe all cases need to be worked in a non-biased manner, and this is any type of case you're working or insurance investigation case. Doesn't matter. You need to work it with an open mind, and that be whether you're just doing a surveillance, investigating accidents, investigating home thefts, vehicle thefts, slip and fall accidents, workers' compensation claims, disability claims, any file work. You need to go in there with an open mind. We're an occupation that needs to be set. Our standard needs to be higher than other occupations. We need to, because I think what we do is incredibly important. And keeping that high standard, that means we need to investigate with no bias towards a file that's being worked. So I've had conversations with investigators over the years regarding files that they're working, and I've kind of put it in a little box here. There's probably in some sense or one way or the other, there's kind of like two types of investigators. And the first type is that investigator that, he goes into a file that he's working and he's detached, right? He's not emotionally involved. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't care about the assignment. It's just that he doesn't take anything about the assignment personally. He just goes in there. He does the job. He doesn't care if an insurance case is fraudulent or not. That's not for him to decide. His information, or his job rather, is just to collect the information to provide to the insurance company, and that's basically it, right? You just collect it and give it to them. They don't go into the investigation believing something or somebody is guilty of something, or that the entire case is fraudulent just because the investigation, or the insurance company rather, asked them to come out and investigate something or collect information on something. This type of investigator understands that companies don't always hire investigators just because they think a claim is fraudulent. Now, there's another type of investigator, which you might, because there's only two. I just talked about it, right? At least in my mind, they go in these two camps, and I'm sure there's more gray area there. But to simplify this a little bit, that's why I put them in two camps. This investigator believes that every claim being worked is because the insurance claim is potentially fraudulent. Why else would an insurance company hire an investigative company or investigator to work something if they to investigate a claim? What would be the point, right? At least that's what they believe. And so I know someone specifically, at least at this time, this is what they believed, that every claim they believed, and this was really a kind of a specific conversation that happened, but they believed that every claim was fraudulent to some degree, whether it be somebody they were conducting surveillance on, or the claim they're investigating, it was their first inclination to believe that fraud was involved unless proven differently. So instead of going into it like, well, let me just see what's going on and maybe there's fraud involved, there's fraud involved, prove me different. And I really took issue with that. And one of the reasons that you really knew that this was the case, other than the person specifically telling me that, was when they would just, like, we talk about, we discuss, cases and we, sometimes we even give each other advice on how to deal with, surveillances, like, what should I do? Do you think I was burned? Those kind of conversations happen all the time with investigators, because sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't know or not. You're thinking, am I crazy? Or, or am I actually, burned on a case? Anyways, those kind of conversations happen, but when they would, in this specific conversation and many other conversations, this investigator would, when they talk about a surveillance case, they would discuss every movement as if it was something fraudulent, or in the course of an interview with somebody regarding a claim, any slight deviant or going off the path of what they think is what was supposed to be said during an interview, they would automatically think that the claim is fraudulent, or even any kind of movement would indicate that someone's being deceptive, even though they had no formal training in that type of thing. And so, basically, and this is really kind of what happened. I asked the investigators specifically how many cases they worked that they believe were there was some fraud involved, and the investigator said that they believe that most of all the files that they ever worked were fraudulent. And after all, why would they even be out? Why would that investigator even be out there if the case wasn't fraudulent? Before I get into my response, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Audible is sponsoring this second part of this podcast. Do you ever feel like you just don't have enough time in the day? Because that happens with me every single day, especially when I want to read something. And so, you don't have to worry about that anymore. If you have books on your list that you want to read and you just feel like you're too busy, why don't you have someone read to you? Someone that could, something that could read to you. And so you could still get the knowledge that you want while you're working, in some cases, while you're driving. That's what Audible does. It gives you freedom to drive and read at the same time by listening to a book, listening to somebody read that book to you. Audible is giving anyone who signs up for a 30-day free trial a free audiobook. They're not going, hey, here's the audiobook we're going to offer you. They're like, hey, go into our library, pick out something you really like, and then you might like it and might enjoy the service. So anyways, if you don't like the free trial that they're giving you and the free book, right? They give you the free book, the trial over 30 days. That's no problem, right? You go ahead and cancel Audible. You get to keep that book. That book stays with you for infinity, I think. And you just go ahead and cancel, and whatever, you keep the free book, you're good to go. So if this sounds good to you, I would like to invite you to go to www.audibletrial.com/PIA to get your free book. I am an affiliate with Audible, and I will receive a small commission at no extra cost to you should you decide to sign up through my link. I thank you in advance for helping support the Private Investigator Advice network of things. Okay, so when going back to the story, this investigator says, most of majority of the claims that I work, surveillance or claims investigation, I believe that there's fraud, and I about lost my crap. I mean, I literally got angry, because I know what happens when that type of mentality creeps in to an investigator's mind, or and it affects the investigation. First of all, because they're wrong. That's not in the majority of the claims that someone that companies are going to get, investigators are going to work. The majority are not, or not the overwhelming majority are not fraudulent. And there's reasons behind that. But secondly, because going into a mentality like that creates a bias for the investigation in general. This misled bias starts an investigation off with an investigator believing a claim is not even legit to begin with, right? In some way or another. And this mentality has the potential to influence how an investigation has worked, maybe how a claimant is or insured is treated during an interview process with somebody, or even some bias can creep into your final report without you even realizing it. And so it's that bias that I'm talking about. It's not good for a claim. It's not good for claimants or the insureds, whoever's being investigated or interviewed, and it's not good for the client because they're not getting maybe the unbiased final product that they need to have, whether they believe it or not. They need to have an unbiased final product, final report. Here's the thing, and not all insurance companies are created equal, and not all insurance adjusters or whoever's signing the insurance investigation, they're not all perfect. But the reason insurance companies are assigning investigators to a claim in most instances, or investigation, in most instances, is to find out whether a claim is legit or not. Typically, there's some sort of red flag that happens in the course of the claim that's happening that makes it so that they need to get more information, dig deeper. That's a lot of the time that's what's happening. And just because when you're doing a surveillance, let's say an insurance company assigns a surveillance to an insurance investigator. Just because you get activity from someone outside, someone doing something, doesn't necessarily mean that they are breaking some restriction, right? Doesn't mean they're necessarily doing something wrong just because they came out and went and got the newspaper. An investigator is not a doctor, right? They don't know the claimant or the insured's medical history. They don't know the whole background story. In most cases, they don't have access to that information. And they don't all the time. Sometimes they do. Sometimes the insurance company provides this information, but sometimes they don't even know what they're actually not physically able to do. Sometimes investigators, and majority of the time, they'll just be like, claimant has a right knee injury or something to that effect. And so it comes down to the investigator just being responsible for documenting as much as they can of the individual they're watching when it comes to a surveillance. And after documenting that activity, they create the product in regards to they compile the video and they create the report, and then they submit that documentation to the insurance company for them to make the decision on what's going on. Okay. Sometimes when it comes to investigating claims, there isn't always something obvious in the claim that makes the insurance company think something fraudulent going on. Sometimes insurance companies just need more information. So going back to what this investigator had said, hey, I think that all these claims are fraudulent. Sometimes that's not even why we're there. We're not even necessarily there because there's a red flag or something. Sometimes it's like they can't get a hold of a claimant. Please go and find this claimant, interview the claimant, find out what happened, right? Because we need to, we know what the insured said. We need to know what really happened. What is the claimant going to say? And again, it depends on what's happening with the claim. Sometimes the claims are complex, and I know the insurance company doesn't want to deal with that, right? They don't. I mean, they've got so many other files they're trying to handle. They need someone to go out there, collect the information. What happened, right? It doesn't necessarily mean there's any fraud going on. Just go tell. I just need to know what happened in this claim. Articulate it to me, so I can understand, and then I can make a decision on it. Right? It has nothing to do with fraud. We're just out there. We're information collecting, and so that's why I take this, this defense against it. Right? I mean, we're investigators, right? And I think people automatically think that there's some guilty party automatically because an investigation is taking place. That's not necessarily the case. And again, if an investigator just sticks with the core thing of just, hey, I need to go out there, I need to collect the information, I need to provide that information to the client. If you stick with that, you're going to be in good shape. I'm of the, we talk about those two camps of investigators. Like, I know what I need to do when I go out to a claim. If I'm investigating a claim or whatever that is, I know the information I need to collect, right? If there's any area of concern, I'll indicate that in the report. If I'm working a surveillance, I don't care if the guy is faking the funk or the girl is faking the funk. I don't care if the claim is fraudulent. If I get something that shows that it's fraudulent, great. I'm glad. I'm happy about that. If I don't, I'm great. I'm happy about that too. It doesn't matter to me either way. I just want to get all the information that I can, do my job the best that I can. And so the client can make an informed decision about what they feel about that, or, what they think is going on with that claim. So that really wraps it up, man. Collect unbiased information, right? Don't go in there thinking that, that something automatically is always fraudulent. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, like there's contradicting evidence. There's literally, evidence provided to you before you even go out there and investigate a claim. Like, look, this is incredibly concerning, and there may be some fraud going on. That happens. That does happen sometimes. And I mean, it's blatant, like it, and you really can't look away from it, but still keep an open mind because you might see something else fraudulent. You might see something else that's important. Instead of keeping your blinders on, only focusing on that one thing, there might be some other things that might be of concern. I can't tell you how many times, though, just generally speaking, where I've worked a file from an insurance company. They're like, the insured said this, and that just does not make sense, and you need to go find out, specifically about, this thing. And then I go out there and I do the investigation, the photos, the interviews, and during the interview, when I'm about to ask that question, that real, that important question the insurance company wants, it was something that the insurer or the insurance company misunderstood, and they put this whole investigation around something that could have been cleared up over a phone call, but because they misunderstood or the context, or maybe it was the notes were written down, something silly, they spent a couple $1,000s on an investigation that could have been cleared up with a phone call, and that happens a lot, and because it happens, that's why I keep an open mind when I go in there, knowing that I might be here for the wrong reasons. Like, the insurance company just misunderstood something. So that's also something to consider too. And when you do enough of these, and you have, all this knowledge from all these different files you've worked, you understand that when you walk into it, not to kind of come in there with that kind of attitude, because you just never know what the file is going to reveal. So listen, I hope you found this, what was I going to say? Positive. Hope you found this helpful. And the main thing I hope that you get from this is just keep an open mind during your investigations. We'll probably talk about this again, because there was something I saw on Netflix from something that reminded me of this topic too when I'm podcasting to you. But anyways, investigate not in a non-biased manner. Keep an open mind. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. And that's it, guys. I guess my rant has ended. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys on the next one.